Hi guys, so this is the second video from the book that's coming out about how much we have in ourselves, well most of us, from Scandinavia and from Scandinavian prehistory that actually defined the Vikings, but also many of the Germanic tribes. I've been talking about that a lot on my channel, so I hope this book will suit you well. It's coming next week in Norway, in Norwegian. So where we left off was right at this huge disaster that occurred 5,900 years ago, the 5.9K event, and causing decimation all over Europe and making this funnel beaker culture a little bit, well, they had to mix with the Scandinavian hunter-gatherers after that, and they had started on it beforehand afterwards, but no, beforehand I mean, but afterwards we see all these new people mixing after these huge disasters. But this disaster caused a really long drying period many places around the world, and some wet periods also other places. But Sahara became a desert at this time, and the steppes became so dried up that the Yamnaya warriors could actually ride their horses really far, and carriages also. So a lot of I've seen scholars connecting this disaster with the spread of the Indo-European migrations. And this new paper here, this is a map from this, has pinpointed the roots of the Yamnaya warriors actually on the southern edge of the Caucasus Mountain, on the Armenian highlands, where also the Mycup culture were, and we know they were very close with them, and supposedly maybe even got the wheel for the carriages, that technology from them. It says here Germanic on the top left. That's all wrong. That came much later because that was the mix, you know, but the mix turned into this battle axe culture, so that would have been more precise to put up there. So we see this warrior coming in, and I'm sorry, I probably should have mentioned this, I did it in the last video. I'm using cartoon characters because so many people get hung up with the males, the men, the male history, the warriors, the hunters, the farmers, but there's a female history here also. So instead of portraying the Hittites like on the photo here on the left, I do this, and that's because I want us to get a little bit more balanced view on history and not forget about the women. I talked a little bit about that in my previous video, and I'll mention something really intriguing about that in my next video, which I think will be in the Iron Age. So in the Neolithic here, around I guess 5,000 years ago, we see these Indo-European warriors spreading into Europe, and this is from a preprint that came out last year from Denmark, and here you can see the height, also the population replacement, with the brown replacing the, I don't know what color that is, some kind of reddish pink, or I don't know, and then the green with the Yamnaya warriors later, and the vegetation cover on the bottom there, you can see it's pollen based. Here you can see the disasters that I'm talking about. So we can see the displacement of peoples. Now this didn't happen in the same way in Scandinavia. I talked some about the reasons for that in my previous video, because it's got to do with the mountains of the north and how far north Scandinavia is. And the Scandinavian hunter-gatherers, they were better suited for adapting up north. Eventually the Yamnaya warriors, or actually well, they spread around into Europe, and the ones who came to Greece, it seems like they actually came from the Indo-Iranian way, coming down from the Anatolia into Europe. So look at this. This is a photo of violence, just to show how violent the time this was. These are mass burials and violence around in Europe from a research paper, and this is how this displacement I talked about happened, but it didn't really. We have the bell beakers there on the British Isles. In Iberia, we have papers saying that close to 100% of all men disappeared. But in Scandinavia, we now see that these sources, or actually I'll do that, we need that photo. The Norse sagas, the sources we have, that they're old stories, the old myths. Even in Denmark, archaeologists have been talking in a new TV show I saw, that the Vanir, the farming community, the agriculturalists in southern Sweden, they were the Vanir. And the Yamnaya who came, they were the Æsir, the warriors. I mean, for the first time now we can say there's a roots, the basis for the root of this myth, that's probably the best way to say it, is historical. The Vanir, the Æsir-Vanir war actually happened. And the thing is, even though they were able to displace a lot of things elsewhere in Europe and start up new cultures there, like I mentioned, the bell beakers, in Scandinavia, the battle axe culture that followed after the funnel-beaker culture is actually a mix of the Æsir and Vanir, just like in the sources. Like Odin's mother Bestla was, well, she was actually Jotun from the north of Norway. So a mix of 3 different peoples. The Scandinavian hunter-gatherers were still able to survive just by heading up north, just by staying in the mountains, and it must have been fierce. About 2500 BC, meaning 4,500 years ago, all these battles happening in this violent culture. And then you had the huge volcano Hekla, I think 4, and Hekla 3 came later, on Iceland, and the huge disaster causing decimation all around Europe. And let's see here now, we're getting to that. The old kingdom in Egypt would fall here, but also many other Neolithic communities. I posted this photo just to show you something about, I saw on this Hancock Netflix documentary. They all hypothesize about the origins of the pyramids, making them much older than they were. You know, the spread of agriculture deals a lot with moving stone, and you can see that the evolution of the pyramids in the early times up until what became the Old Kingdom, in order to clear land to do more agriculture, because you grow and become more people in periods of warmer time periods, you need more land, and you have to collect more stone and put it somewhere, economically put it somewhere. Of course, a pyramid is the best way to do it. And we see thousands, tens of thousands of megalith structures all around Europe. I mean, people in the Neolithic times, they would carry stones and rock a lot. I mean, a lot. This is the Stone Age, not the Stone Age of the hunter-gatherers. I talked about disasters with the wet and dried periods. Here you can see the different type of periods that you don't have the same if it's a wet period. It can be dry somewhere else, just to show you something of that. And out of this disaster, after every disaster, we see the same thing happening. Religion becomes much stronger. We get new languages, or languages evolving, and we see new trading patterns, migrations of people, and new different groups of people blending in. So the funnel-beaker culture and the Yamnaya culture becomes what is called the battle axe culture up north. And still you have some Scandinavian hunter-gatherers even further north. What we see, because of amber in the Baltic and many other valuables further up north, like seal and other sea mammals and fish and bird feathers that only exist up north. You know, these Scandinavian hunter-gatherers and the Vikings, they had the best beds ever. I mean, really, from the feather of this special bird. And I haven't gotten that far yet to translate the book, so I don't know what it's called in English, but it's in the Norwegian version anyway, that's being released in a few days, or actually a few days ago. I'm recording this a few days before this video comes out. So we have all this amber that's really, really valuable all over Europe, and it was used to trade because in the Bronze Age they made bronze of tin and copper, right? But we had the mines. SN is tin, and copper is Cu here. We had the mines in different areas around in Europe, and they would have to have enormous trading networks in these cultures that emerged. And this is why you can't find even daughters in elite graves in present-day Germany. You find the daughters married away 350 kilometers away even to other nobilities or nobility graves. In Scandinavia, around 1600 BC, in the middle of the Nordic Bronze Age, we find an explosion of movement in this study that's looked at isotope analysis. And here you can see up north in Norway how the ships on the rock carvings actually change from the early Bronze Age to the late Bronze Age. I mean, this is spectacular. The ships on the bottom here is exactly the same as you find elsewhere in, well, many places in Europe, but especially in southern Sweden. So obviously the blending has been complete here, and this is when you see a lot more, not only movement, but also trading goods from the north coming down south to the Mediterranean, lots of amber, but most likely many other things. The society that emerged here is why archaeologists like Christian Christensen say that the foundation of the Viking Age was laid down exactly here in the Nordic Bronze Age from the blend of these peoples. And this is where it gets really interesting. This is more like a combined Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings, and Tolkien, as you know, was inspired by this. He knew a lot about what I'm talking about, except I'm using new research here. You see, these Scandinavians went down into something that's called tumulus culture down in present-day Hungary, and there's a new paper, well, no, it's a couple of years old, where they talk about the trading routes in the Viking Age. As you can see here, it's actually applicable, meaning you can use them in the Bronze Age also. That's how much trade it was up in the north. And it was they call it a pyramid trading network, collecting tin in Cornwall and amber in the Baltic and copper down in Austria, and in the middle of the Nordic Bronze Age the copper mines in northeast Italy was used when the Austrian one, the biggest one, sort of became more empty. So this is where this tumulus culture is rather interesting, because we see really strong and close ties, kin kind of ties, like the clans mixed with both Scandinavia but also south down to present-day Balkan and Greece. And these are the hats that have been found in this tumulus culture. And we also have this star disc in bronze here with the Pleiades probably, and the moon and the sun, and this famous bronze disc in present-day Germany from these same cultures. It's all one emerging on the rivers, and we see mercenaries from Scandinavia coming down, and this is what I think actually was the Hyperboreans. There is no doubt in my mind, if you look on only the old sources of Hyperborea, meaning the land beyond the northern wind, where the sun would set and rise only once per year, and this is in the Arctic, of course. They traded even with antlers from female deer, and that's only the reindeer in Europe that have that don't lose their antlers in the winter time. We know this from the mythology in Greece, in the Mycenaean Greek period. Then we have another huge disaster happening, causing the late Bronze Age collapse. Lots of civilizations went down. We have the sea peoples who probably were different pirates, large groups of pirates who most likely used to be mercenaries or sons of them, and they would just go on a havoc, destroy the different Hittite empire and make lots of war against Egypt, and eventually causing havoc and destruction. We also have the fall of Troy happening in present-day Turkey, happening at the same time. Lots of things go on, and we see a crisis period causing what's been called the Dark Ages. Decimation of lots of people. We have that other eruption on Iceland of the volcano in addition, and we have plague. So these dark times lasted for centuries, and it was really, really cold compared to in the last few centuries of the Bronze Age. So there we have the transition period to the Iron Age, and that's where I'm going to stop, because now it gets even more interesting, and I'm going to talk about that in my next video, because that's leading us up to the Viking Age. And I say the Viking Age lasted for at least 1,000 years, and I'll tell you why in my next video. I hope you enjoyed this, and take care.